Coin. Kevin Hincks is with me, co-host of Fast Market Live on the CBOE. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here this Monday morning. Last week we got more from the Mag 7. Most of the Mag 7, for the most part, have had the double beats. Now we have another week of earnings and a lot to watch for. What's on your mind?
Good morning, Nicole. You know, I think this is, you're right, coming off the gargantuan week that we had in terms of economic data and earnings. We don't have quite the same amount of data this week, but you know the headlines will still be there. We're waiting on news on tariffs. President Trump said they're getting closer, and we'll look for some announcements this coming week. We've got some economic data, but it's not top tier. You'll get PMI Composite today and ISM Services coming out in a short while here. We'll get that data. We have earnings coming out. Obviously, the other big news story of this week will be Wednesday's Fed meeting. Not expected to move on interest rates, but the press conference where Jerome Powell talks, I think, will be must-see TV and something everyone will want to watch to see how he sees the overall. Remember, unless I'm wrong, this might be the first time he spoke since he spoke at the Economic Club of Chicago and sent the Dow down 1,000 points with his comments. So I think that will be an interesting turn of events on Wednesday afternoon. Earnings, Palantir after the bell today is a big one. Tomorrow after the bell, AMD will be an interesting one. Uber and Disney on Wednesday. ARM Holdings on Wednesday after the bell. Shopify early on Thursday. Coinbase, not the highest top tier names, but good solid names. Disney will be an interesting one, but this will be after the big week we had, and like you mentioned, the 9-day rally and the soft opening here. Futures are already off their lows, so can we do another down opening rally during the day? Is that the trend now that traders should look at? Nicole, watch for headlines. Scott Bessent is testifying this week. President Trump's meeting with Carney from Canada this week. You've got a Fed meeting. It's going to be a headline week, I think, this week. Nicole?
Yeah, as usual, right? We're getting very used to lots of headlines, and obviously we've already heard that we're expecting some deals this week. I feel like there's been a little de-escalation with China, sort of putting it out there like, let's make a deal. That has to be done with a kid glove. But that being said here, oil, I think, is going to be a big topic as it's sitting around 4-year lows, right? I mean, it's at 57.43 right now when I look up at this board. But these are some of the things that we'll look at. And those Mag 7 names, sort of now what, right? I mean, all these names that are coming out, Palantir will be a highlight. Not sure which ones will really grab people's attention. All can be market-moving events, but this as Microsoft surpasses, I thought, Apple, right, in market cap. I saw that this morning. We'll have a lot to look at, and people's optimism and their willingness to hang on to the rhetoric of something good is coming. Let's see.
So it's interesting. Let's talk about, I think, one of the biggest topics this morning should be crude oil. Here's why. April 1st, you look on a chart of crude oil. April 1st, crude oil was $71, Nicole. Now it's $57. Nicole, that's 20% lower from April 1st till now. Think about what that's going to do to the overall inflation conversation. That can't be ignored. The number one thing that drove inflation higher during COVID and during the start of the Ukraine war was energy prices. They're down 20% since the 1st of April. That's going to show up in inflation data all over the place. And it's going to show up in earnings and for airlines and cruise ships and everything that moves something from point A to point B. The expense of their business is getting cheaper. So that's one of the topics, though we're acknowledging it's lower, we don't acknowledge it as something that's working against inflation and could overwhelm any tariff price hikes. So I think, and remember, the Trump administration led by Scott Bessent talked about lower interest rates, lower energy prices. You're certainly getting them in terms of energy.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I know we're going to be covering this throughout the show and all day, but certainly an exciting weekend when it comes to the Warren Buffett news. You know, finally
Sure.
at 94 years old, he's decided to step aside. And I think that's going to be a Wall Street conversation all week long, right?
Well, what it'll be a celebration of his career and what he's done with Berkshire Hathaway. And every trader that I've ever met, every investor has some type of Warren Buffett quote that they think about. Like what's come up lately: be nervous when the market is greedy and be greedy when the market is nervous. I think you've seen that play out over the last couple of weeks. He definitely spoke about that in his comments, saying, if you thought that this recent correction was something market changing or life changing, then you're probably in the wrong business. I thought that was wonderful when he said that.
We're going to talk to Jeff Pierce in a moment about this Warren Buffett story from the weekend, a big one. A lot of what we expected, I guess, that he would sort of give up his role in the lead chair there.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm very curious about is the tech trade. You know, is tech alive, et cetera? You know, where are we going to stand on semis and those Mag 7 names?
Yeah, I think, I think remember, we have Nvidia is the last Magnificent 7 name, and it's still a couple of weeks away. It's May 28th. So we've got time to let that kind of cook slowly in anticipation of Nvidia's earnings. We'll get AMD tomorrow after the bell. That'll be an indication. Remember that it breaks out their chip business via one part versus the other. So I just think that, the tech earnings that have already come out, remember, this has been a fabulous earnings season in terms of beats, especially in large cap tech. They're all beating by significant amounts. So I just think that's going to play out over a long period of time. Nvidia, like I said, we've still got 23 days until Nvidia's earnings, so we'll have plenty of time to discuss that over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, tech earnings, remember, earnings season in general has been a big success, beating numbers across the board. Nicole?
Oh, I would love to be sitting with President Trump as he watches Jay Powell on Wednesday speak, because he was so upset last time, as you mentioned, at the Economic Council, I guess it was a Thursday, right? The market was doing fine, and as he spoke, it was tick, 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 all the way down, and he really crushed the market that day. So we'll see what we get this Wednesday. So looking forward to that Fed meeting very much. Kevin Hincks, thank you. I'll see you later. Thank you.